Let's talk about GAMSAT preparation for people that have a non-science background. And so first I want to say this about non-science background. Non-science background is really a sliding scale because obviously some people have truly, really no science background, meaning they never did science even in high school or nothing beyond grade 10 or something. And those kind of students can apply to medical school, of course. But of course there's it's more common that someone has done perhaps at least one science course in high school or a couple of science courses in high school, but it might be years ago, a long time ago. And then of course there are some students who have done biology or chemistry at first year university level at least, but perhaps have not done physics or have not done one of the sciences. So there is a sliding scale. So when I make blanket statements, I'm going to be making blanket statements about the hardcore person who's had no science background. Then you have to modify my comments based on your personal situation, whether you have a little bit of a science background or whatever your situation is. So it's a sliding scale. Don't take my comments as my comments will be on the extreme side in terms of clarifying things. First of all, I want you to know that you can be pretty confident about applying to medical school without a science background. You can be, because every year hundreds of students are admitted to medical schools in Australia, the UK, and Ireland that have had no science background. Medical schools want diversity in their medical programs, diversity of perspective and experience, and this includes people without science backgrounds because everybody has something to contribute. And the GAMSAT, it's important for you to understand how the GAMSAT score breaks down, because the GAMSAT score is 50% non-science and 50% science. Yes, there are 3 sections, but there's one score for section 1, which is, of course, the reasoning and humanities and social sciences section. There's one score that you get for section 2, which is the essay writing section, which presumably a person with life experience and a non-science background has a distinct advantage over most science students. And then there's section 3, which is the last section, the longest section. And because it's only one section, it's weighted twice. So most medical programs will weight GAMSAT section 1 once, section 2 once, and then section 3 twice. So 50% of the GAMSAT score is dependent on non-science sections and 50% on science sections. Of course, if you're applying to the University of Melbourne, it's different. They weight each of the 3 sections the same, but generally speaking, medical programs weight it that way. So that's the first thing for you, to make sure that you feel that you have a stake in this exam, that this exam was designed for all students, whether they have science or non-science backgrounds, and that's why there's balance in the way that the GAMSAT score is. Now, because this is a discussion about science section 3 preparation for people with non-science backgrounds, I'm going to use the word formula a few times. And so first of all, I want you to be aware of this 70-30 formula. Everybody doesn't, not every resource uses the same numbers, but I'm just talking from my experience, and other resources might say a little differently. And that is the idea of the 70-30 formula is that it takes, in order for you to learn 70% of the material, knowledge that you acquire for an exam, it takes 30% of your time. 30% of the preparation time to get 70% of the knowledge. If you start going for that last 30% of the knowledge, meaning you're trying to learn everything, it's going to take you 70% of the time, more than twice the time to learn the last bit. What I'm trying to explain is that you have to, from the outset, have an understanding of what score you want to achieve. This is the key thing for your preparation for this section, because you're not trying to get 100%. You have to prove to yourself, of course, by doing practice and whatever, that you can do very well in section 1 and 2 compared to science students. So you have to make sure that that's true, because that's sort of implicit in this whole discussion. Because if you're going to do very well in section 1 and 2, then when it comes to section 3, you're not aiming for a perfect score. So don't try to chase students who go online and say, oh, you have to know this, or you have to know this for the GAMSAT, or I had a question on this or that on my GAMSAT. You can't start trying to chase every single possibility on the GAMSAT, because that will take an enormous amount of time and resources. But for you to get a GAMSAT score in section 3 that is acceptable, good enough for you to get into medical schools across the country, that is much more manageable. That is a manageable situation. And so you have to always keep that in mind. Don't chase details, because you will get lost in a hurry. Science is almost unlimited, okay? And even at this level, you could end up in corners chasing details and wasting your time. So you have to have that clear in your mind. What score do I need? And I'm going to learn basic information in order for me to then start applying reasoning skills in order to achieve my goal. And that is a personal decision. It's not random. Okay, so that gives the basic idea is that you have to have a reasonable objective. Another formula for you, so that's the 70-30 formula. Next formula is the 1/3 formula. This is another formula that students usually have no concept of, and that is the formula to prepare for the GAMSAT. There's 3 components. You have to do a review for the exam. You have to review the basic content, knowledge, understanding, and so on. You have to do practice problems. The practice problem's purpose is to reinforce the knowledge, but also to start developing the skill specific to the GAMSAT, which is the specific type of reasoning that's used for the exam. So the problem solving. And the next component is the full-length test, because a timed full-length test is a special experience, especially when it's the GAMSAT, because it's one thing to be able to remember Ohm's law as V is equal to IR, but it's another thing to apply it to a new situation. And that requires some reasoning and a moment to be able to reflect on what your options are. So that requires some experience. If you're a marathon runner, you're going to run a marathon. If you've only done short sprints before the actual marathon, obviously that's a mistake. You know, you have to do a few marathons at least, have that experience, go through the difficulty of having to concentrate late in the day, late in the afternoon, continuing to give a full effort, you know, finding different ways to take mental breaks during the exam and then coming back, you know, full on. This requires experience. Now, this 1/3 formula, I want you to understand that most students who prepare for the GAMSAT will spend probably 80% of their time doing the review. Then they'll do probably 15% of their time with practice problems, and probably 5% of their time doing full-length practice tests. And then they have this mentality that, oh yeah, I don't have to do a lot of full-length practice tests because I'm going to do the real GAMSAT as a full-length practice test. Well, why not do that at home? in the safety of your own home, which is, I think, you know, a better idea. I'm not going to put down the idea of doing the real exam as a practice test. I mean, some people are committed to that idea, and I'm not disputing it, but I'm just saying that it's better if you can do some full-length practice tests at home. It makes more sense, and that will optimize your performance on the exam day. Okay, so let me underline one last time what I'm saying. I'm saying that 1/3 of your time should be spent on reviewing the science that you need. 1/3 of your time should be on practice problems. So if you find yourself at the end of February still doing a review, then you've made a strategic mistake if you intend on sitting the March exam, because you should not be reviewing at the end of February anymore. All of your time should be on problems, and some of your time should be in full-length tests. And then in March, the beginning of March, well, ideally at the end of February you would have done at least one full-length test, or possibly more. I mean, you know, the more the better. And then in March, only full-length tests is what your focus must be. You're not going to be reviewing materials at that point. So this is the ideal way that you're going to be spending your time. Now, so that's the 1/3 formula. Now, in terms of your total amount of time preparing for the exam, an average successful student will spend 3 to 6 hours a day for 3 to 6 months. So that's an average formula. Now, I know you're going to meet students who will say they studied for 1 week before the GAMSAT and they scored a 110, which is impossible, but whatever. So they scored a fantastic score after studying for 1 week. And yes, it is possible. These are students who have very strong reasoning, science reasoning skills. They've had it throughout university. It doesn't mean that they have the highest GPA. It means that they sat in class, they understood the concept very quickly, and even though they didn't score the highest on the exam, it's because university exams are based on memory and not very much on reasoning skill. But the GAMSAT is the reasoning exam. And these students, normally, they love to read, they like to read, they like to write, they read newspapers, they read from any sources possible, and therefore they have a balanced approach during the whole exam. But the majority of students do not have that kind of performance without preparation, and the majority of students require much more time than that. So that's the formula. So now I'm going to talk about your review problems and full-length practice tests. I'm going to be a little bit more specific when it comes to that. So what should you be doing for a review? So science students usually, they'll use something like the gold standard GAMSAT book. They'll use the book because it's very dense, okay? But a non-science student, if you just go for the book, you're going to feel a bit lost because of some of the science details that are presented there. So the way out for this is the videos. So 10 hours of videos comes with the gold standard GAMSAT book, but really it's the videos in which basically I start with the basics all the time and then I move forward. And therefore, even just by using those videos, in all there's about 50 hours of videos that I put on the website, gamsat-prep.com. And if you go through those videos, you would have been able to achieve, you would have been able to learn most of the content that is required for the GAMSAT. Most of the content just through the videos. And therefore, you can go through the book and read it more lightly. You don't have to feel the weight of every word, but you could use it just to reaffirm some of the knowledge that you got through the video. So I have to emphasize that part. And I do have to mention this picture. Why on earth do I have this picture? I have this picture because of a common mistake that students who are preparing for the GAMSAT think. Students often think that the objective of preparing for the GAMSAT is to somehow develop your own personal GAMSAT library. And this is, of course, the wrong strategy, because what happens is that you have so much content and so much material that the question is, what is relevant to the GAMSAT? What is not relevant to the GAMSAT? What is, and then you start reading through the material, and of course you can't memorize it all. You can't learn it all. You need something far more acceptable to have in front of you. And so if you go to Gumtree or some online classified websites, you'll see students often selling things like this, big piles of preparation materials that they use for the GAMSAT. A lot of students, by the way, I do have to be frank, obviously, a lot of students use things like for dummies guides, like organic chemistry for dummies or something like that. You know, some people will use level A guides, summaries, and so on. But as I said, the problem is that they tend to be non-specific, and but some students do find them helpful. But you definitely will not go into a textbook. If you start reviewing materials in textbooks, you'll really go off the beaten path. So for the review, the emphasis, I would say, are the videos. Then on the second rung, you know, the book, the Gold Standard GAMSAT, and I would say that you should also take advantage of the multimedia approach as much as possible. So by the way, even if you're not using Gold Standard videos, you can go on YouTube and look for videos. You can go to Khan Academy and look for videos. But again, though, you have to try to structure it so that you stay according to what is covered for the GAMSAT. I'll also mention other, you know, in terms of multimedia, you can use smartphone apps for the GAMSAT. You could use MP3s, flashcards, and these webinars as a way to help review content for the exam, and of course the live courses. So every year I give you know, the live courses in Australia and in Ireland, and in the live courses we use a problem-based learning approach, and that means even if you have no science background, every single person in the class must participate by doing problems in the classroom. So it's not done like old-fashioned classes and teaching science and hoping that you remember it, but rather everybody must participate. So you're going to have to learn and know things during the process. And of course, PBL, problem-based learning, is the way medical schools operate now. The great majority of medical schools have designed their programs based on problem-based learning. And so that's what we use in our classrooms for the courses. So all that is all your options in terms of reviewing content for the exam. So now let's talk about practice problems. So the reason that we do these, the blue booklet ACER practice problems, is because very early in your preparation, it's important for you to see the types of problems that you can expect for the GAMSAT. It's true, GAMSAT students will say, oh, the blue booklet, it's a little easier than the real exam, or something. Yeah, some students will say that, but it's not the point. The point is that here ACER is showing you a sample of the type of reasoning skills that they expect you to have for the exam. So you could see, like we saw in our physics webinar, that some equations do have to be memorized. Because if you go to the forums, you know, you'll get a sense from students that, oh, I didn't have to memorize anything. That's because they took science courses and they had a sense of Ohm's law without memorizing Ohm's law. They had a sense of it. They had a sense of conservation of mechanical energy, even though they didn't, you know, literally memorize an equation. So it's very important for you to not go by rumors, but rather you actually see the exam. Sorry, just one moment, please. Okay, that you actually see some of ACER's practice questions. This is very important that you do it early. I know the sense that students get. A lot of students get this feeling, oh, I cannot look at practice problems yet because I haven't finished my review. Well, there's a time limit on your review because it can only represent 1/3 of your preparation. So at some point, you have to just tell yourself, I've reviewed all I have time for. It's time I have to start looking at practice problems. Now, I admit that when you're doing the practice problems without a science background, you need help to look at worked solutions. But that's why one of the things that I've done is do these webinars to make sure that you have access to all the worked solutions to the science questions in the blue booklet. And I'll talk about it in a moment. I also put all the worked solutions to the ACER full-length practice tests on YouTube. 10 hours of videos in which I'm just explaining giving the work solution. So you can see that if your preparation isn't about looking at real ACER questions and going through those work solutions, then you're making a tactical mistake because you're not preparing for this specific exam. And to prepare for this specific exam, you have to spend 2/3 of your time working on problems that are oriented to this type of exam. Okay, so that's the blue booklet. That's why we do the webinars. That's why you should be, doing all those practice problems. But you should keep the other 3 ACER booklets to do as timed tests. So that will give you a different experience. But the ACER Blue booklet will give you that overall perspective that you need. Okay. So other sources for practice problems. Of course, if you have the gold standard GAMSAT book, it's very important that after you finish reviewing a chapter that you do the practice questions for that chapter, which are online. So you use the online access card and you do those chapter review questions. And that will help to consolidate your knowledge, and some of those questions will have that sort of GAMSAT approach in terms of problem solving or reasoning. So it'll have that dual aspect. So, and if you don't have the book, the problems can be accessed through a program called GAMSAT University, which you can Google or whatever. And also for the live, in terms of practice problems, that's the purpose of the live courses as well, is we have a couple of days in which we just do practice problems, and then we have a couple of days for the full-length testing and review. And now the full-length tests. What full-length tests? Well, of course, you have 4 booklets from ACER. One is the blue booklet, which you would have done as part of your problems. But then you have 3 more booklets that are available. 2 are full-length tests and 1 is a half-length test. So, and you get those from ACER. And as I mentioned, I mean, when you do these tests, you don't hack away at them. You don't do a 5 minutes here, 10 minutes there, 20 minutes tomorrow. You sit down and it's 9 to 5, do not disturb sign on the doorknob, phone is off, and et cetera, and you take the 1-hour lunch break, you do everything exactly like the real exam. And then you spend at least 1 or 2 days reviewing the exam. That's right, 1 or 2 days to review the exam, because the most learning you're going to have is not really by sitting the exam, it's by what you do afterwards and learning from that experience. And then, as I mentioned, I put 10 hours of videos going over the work solutions of those ACER exams, and you just go on YouTube and search for GAMSAT or GAMSAT ACER practice test or whatever, and you can go through all the different questions and work solutions. And hopefully you'll find it's presented in a way that's easy to understand. And even if you have questions, you can always post it in our forum or post them on YouTube, and somehow one way or the other we'll get back to you. And besides that, we have the gold standard GAMSAT on our website. We have 6 practice tests. One is a free mini practice test. The other one is a full-length test, which is also at the back of the book in the gold standard GAMSAT. So it's a full-length practice test, and the work solutions are there online. And then we have tests numbered 2 to 5. The test number, so those tests are all online, full-length tests you can use for practice. Test number 5 is also the test that we use on campus when we do the live courses. So besides Acer and Gold Standard, there's only really one company that does good practice tests. Some students will use Des O'Neill for a practice test, and they have some pretty good practice tests as well. So besides Acer and Gold Standard, that would be the only practice tests that I would say are at a level that I would say is good quality, worth it. So I think that's it. The last thing that I wanted to talk about are your gold notes. So an essential part of your preparation are the personal notes that you take. I use the expression gold notes, but you can call them whatever you want. You can call them hieroglyphics or whatever, but it's your personal notes. So your notes have to be very brief. They need to be written in a way that only you understand them. Truly, only you understand them. And just to give you an example, if you were to go through a chapter in the book, for example, in the Gold Standard GAMSAT book, you go through a chapter, the amount of notes you would write from that chapter would probably be half a page or less. That's right, half a page or less. I know many students will take notes that are as long as a chapter itself. That's not taking notes. The procedure of taking notes is an active process in which you're continually thinking, you're evaluating what do you know, what do you not know, and so on. So it's an active process, and it's a process in which you're always condensing information and relating information to other things that you know. Okay? So, and it's only because you are able to have very, very brief notes that every week you should be able to review your notes from the beginning. So if you've been taking notes on physics, chemistry, whatever, you're reviewing it from the beginning every week. You can only do that if you have very brief notes. So your notes end up being like 10 or 20 pages or 25 pages, but they don't end up being a huge binder filled with notes, because then you would have completely lost the point. So for example, hopefully you won't be writing V is equal to IR, V stands for voltage, I stands for current, R stands for resistance. You definitely shouldn't be doing anything like that. If you write V IR, you should know what that all stands for, but you should also have just some strange way the equation was used that you didn't conceive of that. You hadn't thought that it could be used in that way, and a note just to spark the idea. Not to write it out in detail, but just to spark the idea, so that even when you're reviewing your notes, you have to review them actively. So, so that gives you an idea. So you're going to be taking your gold notes when you go through the reviewing process, you're learning about the science and so on, but also you're taking gold notes when you do practice problems. Is there some practice problem that you saw that you never imagined, like some of the problems we saw today? There was one problem that if you hadn't noticed the diameter of the ball, you would have gotten it wrong. Okay? So if you hadn't noticed some specific aspect, so you might want to write a little note, maybe half of a line, that sparks the idea. Don't forget to look for this. Don't forget to look for that while you're doing practice problems, so that you will remember this. And by the way, before you do a full-length test, every single time you review all your gold notes. So you go through all your gold notes, then you do the full-length test, because then you maximize your experience. And then once you do a full-length test, and you spend 1 to 2 days going over all of the materials, going over your experience, all the questions and mistakes and so on, then you are going to be taking more notes. And those notes are going to only be on just the top level information. What concept did I miss? What idea did I miss that I'm going to be able to remember for the next part? So that's for the gold notes that you create for your full-length test, and then you keep reviewing that. And so students often wonder, what do I study the week before the exam? What do I study on the days leading up to the exam? You're only studying from your gold notes. That's it. You only study the high density notes from your learning experience. Okay, so there you have it. It's by you're having the most efficient notes possible. You can consolidate your knowledge, and you can improve each time you do another test. Okay, and by the way, this picture is there so that you know what you should not do. You should not try to develop your GAMSAT library. Well, that is it for today. I hope that you were able to glean some information that will be helpful for your preparation. If you do have any specific questions, don't forget we have a forum, gamsat-prep.com/forum, and you can go to you can go online and post any questions that you have. You could actually post questions that you have about any of the ACER questions, though I'm sure you'll find a video for it. But you can also post questions that you have about GAMSAT preparation. If you have any issues or whatever about GAMSAT preparation, you can post them in our forum, and we'll usually get back to you. So for those of you, I'll see you in Ireland, I'll see you next week. And those of you in Australia, I'll see you in 2 weeks, or 2 or 3 weeks. I hope you have a great day or evening, and you know, your preparation is in your hands. So just keep at it, and you'll get to where you want to go. So good luck with your studies.